Pregnant wife. Waited alone in the hospital, the millionaire was out with his mistress. Lightning cracked across the sky as Christine Harrington, heavily pregnant and trembling from contractions, sat alone on a stiff hospital bench. Each flash of pain reminded her that her husband, Michael Harrington, prominent millionaire and charismatic business tycoon, was nowhere in sight. Instead, rumors whispered that he was out on the town with a stunning young woman, far from Christine's hospital room. Confusion, heartbreak, and desperation churned in her mind. Would he ever appear at her side, or had he chosen another path entirely? She could feel the seconds ticking away, each one louder than the last, in an endless night of uncertainty. Christine Harrington's life had once resembled a glossy magazine spread. Born to a middle-class family in North Carolina, she had grown up with humble dreams, a comfortable home, a loving spouse, and a steady routine. Those dreams took an extravagant turn when she met Michael Harrington, whose family name carried an almost legendary weight in the business world. He swept Christine off her feet one crisp evening at a charity gala where she'd been volunteering to hand out programs. Michael, with his confident posture and magnetic gaze, lingered by the punch bowl until he caught her eye. Their conversation flowed, laughter mingling easily with the soft notes of the string quartet in the background. In the early months of their courtship, Christine was dazzled by Michael's passion, generosity, and his relentless determination to create the perfect life for them. He financed romantic getaways, showered her with exotic gifts, and seemed genuinely interested in her dreams. Indeed, he promised they would someday achieve far more than she had ever dared to imagine. Yet even then, Christine sensed small cracks in his polished exterior. His phone calls were abrupt and secretive, his nights ended later than expected. And though his business demands sounded legitimate, meetings with clients, urgent negotiations, last minute flights, Christine's intuition whispered that something was off. She was inexperienced in the realm of high-stakes finance and insisted on trusting him. His words were sweet, after all, and his glimmering vision for their future together was irresistible. Still, she had never anticipated the changes that came once they were married. The Harrington name was powerful. Christine quickly found that both a privilege and a burden. She experienced special treatment in restaurants, hotels, and stores, but she also encountered prying eyes, rumor-mongers, and gossip columnists. Clandestine photographers snapped pictures of her strolling in the park or buying groceries. She had never yearned for that spotlight, and at times it pressed on her heart like an invisible weight, making her uneasy. While Christine longed for a peaceful life of love and mutual respect, Michael's ambitions soared higher with every success. He launched new companies, diversified investments, and traveled constantly. The more money he made, the more frantic his schedule became. Their evenings together became fewer, and their intimacy vanished behind an invisible glass wall he built between them. She reasoned that perhaps marriage was just challenging at this stage, reassuring herself with the hope that a new baby might bring them closer. So, on the evening she discovered she was pregnant, Christine assumed it was a turning point, a tangible sign that they were about to grow stronger as a couple. For a while, Michael did seem thrilled. He boasted about fatherhood to his colleagues, hired the best interior designer to transform a guest suite into a cozy nursery, and insisted on the best medical care. Yet soon Christine noticed his enthusiasm was often overshadowed by phone calls he had to take in another room. He went out at odd hours, claiming to finalize business deals that simply couldn't wait. And thus, the stage was set for the drama that unfurled the night Christine went into labor. Christine had been feeling contractions for a day or so, but they were mild and intermittent, typical for someone nearing her due date. She was at home alone that night. Michael had texted her in the morning, claiming he was in a crucial meeting with new investors from Singapore. Exhausted by the constant swirl of half-truths and suspicious business dinners, she forced herself to dismiss the creeping doubt in her heart. She knew she had to focus on her baby. At around 8 p.m., the mild contractions escalated sharply. Christine could hardly breathe through the surges of pain. She swallowed her pride and called Michael repeatedly, hoping he would pick up and rush home. But every call went to voicemail. She texted him, her messages growing frantic as she typed, "I think the baby's coming. Please hurry." No response. Her cheeks flushed with hurt, but she knew she couldn't hesitate. She grabbed the suitcase she'd packed weeks ago with essentials for labor and postpartum recovery. Then she dialed for a taxi. The world outside was engulfed in storm clouds and rolling thunder, suiting her tangled emotions. She arrived at the hospital alone, her steps unsteady yet determined. Nurses hurried to help her, guiding her to the labor ward. They placed her in a bed and prepared for immediate observation, hooking her up to monitors and offering words of comfort. Christine tried to maintain composure, but in the recesses of her mind, despair began to bloom. At first, she told herself Michael was simply stuck in traffic, or maybe his phone battery had died. But as minutes bled into hours, Christine's self-reassurances withered. The pain between contractions kept intensifying, requiring more focused breathing and occasional moans. Concerned nurses asked about her husband, and Christine could only offer an apologetic shrug, lying that he was on his way. On the inside, she felt both abandoned and furious. How dare he leave her alone at a time like this? Throughout the night, Christine discovered she wasn't just battling labor pains, she was battling fear, heartbreak, and a growing sense that she deserved better. Each wave of pain was a stark reminder that her dream of a supportive marriage might have been an illusion. The husband, a man she had pinned all her hopes on, was out of reach. She clung to the rails of the hospital bed, focusing on a single thought: please let my baby be safe. While Christine labored alone, Michael Harrington sat in a dimly lit booth in one of the city's trendiest nightclubs. Coils of cigarette smoke and neon lights wove around him. The air smelled of expensive cologne and top-shelf liquor. Seated next to him was Valentina Rousseau, a striking woman with sleek black hair, perfectly manicured nails, and designer heels that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Valentina was a rising social media influencer who, for the past 6 months, had been Michael's not-so-secret mistress. Michael was no longer the bashful man who'd proposed to Christine by candlelight. He was bold, brash, and fully intoxicated with both power and alcohol. He'd neglected to check his phone, where Christine's frantic calls and messages waited. If he had, he might have known he was about to become a father that very night. But his mind was elsewhere, lost in the adoration Valentina showered upon him, the rush of living a double life without immediate consequences. Only recently had his close friend, Eric Manning, begun to question the morality of what Michael was doing. Eric had known Michael since college, back when Michael was merely an ambitious finance major. That evening, Eric found Michael hunched over an exclusive VIP table, whispering into Valentina's ear. Despite the ear-splitting music, Eric tried to confront Michael. "Don't you think Christine's at home waiting for you? She's due any day." Michael shrugged him off. "She's fine," he said, voice tinged with irritation. "She has her mother's support. The doctors are on call. Everything's under control. I'm just finishing some business here." Eric's eyes darted to Valentina, who was sipping a glass of champagne, feigning a bored expression. "Business?" he asked in disbelief. "That's a convenient excuse. I don't recall your father teaching you to handle your responsibilities this way." Michael glared, his pride wounded at the mention of his father. "He taught me to provide everything my wife could ever need. She's not lacking for anything." "Just let it go, Eric." Eric stared, realization sinking in that Michael had changed irrevocably. His fortune had twisted him into someone unrecognizable, a man who placed fleeting pleasures and grandiose ambitions over his marriage and unborn child. In that moment, Eric knew that any attempt at reason would fall on deaf ears. He decided to leave, throwing one last pleading look at Michael's phone on the table. By the time Michael noticed the half-dozen missed calls from Christine, he was outside the club, caught in the glare of paparazzi flashbulbs. Valentina tugged at his sleeve, complaining about a headache, requesting they go somewhere private. Torn between fear and annoyance, he finally checked his phone. A jolt of shock coursed through him as he read, "I'm in labor. Where are you? Please come soon." Michael's heart pounded. In a flurry of confusion, he stepped away from Valentina and told her he had an emergency. She looked at him blankly, frustration lurking behind her carefully made-up eyes. But Michael wasn't about to risk losing everything by ignoring Christine's call. At least, that's what he told himself. He dashed to the street, searching for his car. A swirl of raindrops pelted his expensive suit, soaking through as thunder roared overhead. Guilt mingled with panic. Had he just jeopardized the most important moment of his life? While Christine gripped the sides of her hospital bed, the Harrington family was in uproar, unbeknownst to her. Michael's mother, Catherine Harrington, had been awake all night, pacing the marbled floors of her estate. She had a love-hate relationship with Christine. On one hand, she admired Christine's gentle spirit. On the other hand, she believed her son was destined for a more socially established bride, perhaps someone with family connections rivaling their own. But Catherine also had a sense of honor. She refused to condone Michael's rumored extramarital affairs and had warned him countless times, "Recklessness will one day cost you everything." However, Catherine was no stranger to the Harrington men's roving tendencies. Her own late husband, William, had once been rumored to keep a mistress in Hong Kong. Despite the gossip, Catherine had stoically carried on, raising Michael and maintaining the family's pristine public image. She had grown used to silencing scandals with discreet payoffs or carefully orchestrated denials. Though she had confronted Michael privately, urging him to treat Christine with respect, she had never threatened to cut him off. In the end, her maternal instincts and her desire to preserve the Harrington family name kept her from pushing Michael too hard. But that night, with the storm raging, Catherine found her patience wearing thin. Christine's mother, Linda Parsons, had called Catherine's personal line, announcing that Christine was in the hospital alone. Linda was livid, demanding to know Michael's whereabouts, accusing the Harrington family of carelessness. Catherine had never heard Linda so furious. Unsettled and sensing a potential scandal, Catherine dialed Michael's number repeatedly, each attempt going unanswered. Only after Michael left the nightclub did he call his mother back. In a brief exchange, he blurted, "I'm on my way to the hospital. I messed up. I'll fix it." Then he hung up. Catherine lowered the phone from her ear, dread settling like a leaden weight in her chest. By midnight, Christine was in active labor. Her contractions came fast and hard, leaving her with only seconds of respite. Every nerve in her body vibrated with pain, yet her deepest ache emanated from an emotional wound, her husband's absence. Nurses and the obstetrician, Dr. Keller, encouraged her to push or to breathe in certain rhythms, but the hospital room felt like a place of loneliness. Anxiety gnawed at her composure, sweat trickled down her brow, and tears slid unbidden from her eyes. Linda Parsons arrived shortly after receiving Catherine's frantic call. Christine, eyes blurred with pain, reached for her mother. Relief flooded her that at least one family member was there, but hurt gripped her at the realization that it wasn't Michael. Together, they navigated the next hour. Linda mopped Christine's forehead with a cool cloth, whispered encouragement in her ear, and tried to keep her from the brink of despair. But a question lingered in Linda's mind. Where was Michael? In Linda's eyes, his failure to show was inexcusable, no matter how busy he might have been. The clock ticked on, and Christine felt a wave of exhaustion creep in. Waves of pain and tension pressed upon her, each stronger than the last. At times, she clenched her mother's hand and prayed that Michael would burst through the door. The minutes were interminable. She saw Linda shoot furious glances at the clock, and Christine felt a swirl of heartbreak and anger. She kept hearing the echo of her mother's earlier warnings. Linda had insisted that Michael's repeated absences weren't just business-related. She'd told Christine never to ignore those small warning bells of suspicion. But Christine had foolishly clung to her illusions, wanting to believe her husband was loyal at heart. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the double doors to the delivery floor swung open, and in rushed Michael, drenched in rain. Sweat and raindrops merged on his forehead, his suit jacket sopping. He skidded to a stop just outside Christine's room, uncertain if he had the right to go in. A nurse shot him a disapproving glare, but she let him pass, ignoring Linda's protests for Christine's sake maybe. A father's presence might still ease the emotional strain. When Michael entered the room, Christine's eyes flickered open. Even through the haze of pain and heartbreak, she felt conflicting emotions, relief that he had come at last, anger that he had taken so long, and a faint flicker of hope that maybe this moment would prompt him to change. With shaky hands, Michael approached the bedside, quietly murmuring her name, but Christine's eyes snapped with pain, both physical and emotional. She only had the energy to choke out, "Where were you?" before another contraction tore through her. Michael could barely answer. Guilt choked him. He mumbled something about a traffic jam, but Christine knew there was more to the story. Their gazes locked, and in the throbbing silence, Christine recognized a secret in his eyes she'd been trying to deny for months. He was lying, and she was too tired to pretend it away. The labor's intensity demanded full focus, leaving Christine unable to confront Michael in that moment. Dr. Keller calmly guided her through a wave of contractions, encouraging her to push in measured sequences. Christine cried out, clinging to the hospital bed, while Linda and Michael each gripped one of her hands. The monitors beeped, signifying the baby's fluctuating heartbeat. In a maddening cacophony of pain, fear, and adrenaline, Christine gave the final push. At the stroke of 2:14 a.m., the baby's cries cut through the stormy night. A boy, pink and fragile, arrived in the world. Christine's breath came in ragged gasps, tears of relief dampening her cheeks. The medical staff laid the baby on her chest. She felt warmth, love, and awe surging within. For a fleeting second, she glanced over at Michael, searching his eyes. Was he feeling the same rush of wonder, or was he still caught in the web of lies? She saw tears in his eyes, genuine or not, she couldn't tell. Exhaustion clouded her ability to read his expression accurately, but she sensed his tension. Even in that sacred moment, an invisible gulf yawned between them. Linda paced outside while the nurses cleaned and checked the newborn. She was torn between joy at having a grandson and resentment over Michael's tardiness. In the hallway, Linda noticed Catherine Harrington entering the ward, her face lined with worry. Catherine opened her arms to Linda in a conciliatory gesture, but Linda pulled back, refusing a hug. She couldn't help but scold the older woman for her son's failures. Catherine's face fell, but she mustered a stony resolve. "Linda, I understand your anger, but please, let's focus on Christine. We need to make sure she recovers and that the baby is healthy." Linda, her voice trembling, responded, "Healthy or not, the mother of my grandchild has spent months alone. Where was your son then? Where was he tonight? If Christine had died in childbirth, would he have only arrived in time for the funeral?" The stinging words made Catherine flinch. Deep inside, Catherine felt the familiar mixture of shame and protectiveness. She, too, had once been let down by a Harrington man. but years of managing scandals had taught her the art of composure. She pursed her lips and whispered, "We can't change the past hour, Linda, but I promise I will do everything in my power to ensure Michael makes it up to Christine, to you. I don't want our families torn apart." Linda simply sighed, too drained to continue the argument. She nodded stiffly and turned her attention back to the room where her daughter lay recovering. Over the next 2 days, Christine tried to rest, tend to her newborn son named Gabriel, and make sense of her fractured marriage. She noticed how Michael drifted in and out of the hospital room, as though plagued by guilt. He brought her expensive bouquets that seemed more like display pieces than heartfelt gestures. She didn't have the energy to care about lilies and roses, not when she needed him to hold her hand and promise he would never leave her again. She watched him anxiously check his phone, always ensuring it was on silent mode, as if waiting for a call he dared not answer in her presence. When visitors came, business associates, extended family, even old friends from her hometown, Michael put on the perfect show, standing by Christine's side, introducing baby Gabriel, and making proud, fatherly statements. But the moment they left, Christine could feel his restlessness. He mumbled about urgent business deals, property developments, or investment summits. Sometimes his phone would light up with an unknown caller, and he'd step out into the hallway to speak in hushed tones. Christine's heart twisted each time, suspecting Valentina or someone connected to that new life he was leading. One afternoon, Christine mustered the courage to say, "Michael, the first know there's someone else." The tension in the room snapped like a wire pulled too tight. He glanced at the door as though planning to flee, but he couldn't. Christine's eyes bore into his. She saw him swallow, and for a second the guilt was plain on his face. He hesitated, then shook his head in denial. "You're just tired," he said. "We'll talk when you're better." Christine felt rage spark in her chest. "I gave birth alone. You realize that, don't you? You lied about a business meeting. You left me here in pain. I'm not imagining any of this." Michael exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. "Christine, I'm sorry. I should have been here. I can't change that. But things are complicated at work. My new investors are requiring me to keep up with them socially. I have to hold dinners, go to clubs. They pay attention to every gesture, every relationship. They demand a certain lifestyle." Christine blinked, stunned by the sheer absurdity of that excuse. "So, your new investors insisted that you abandon your pregnant wife and entertain a socialite?" Her voice quavered with sarcasm. "That's the job now." She saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to retort, but then just shook his head. Silence settled, thick and suffocating. She broke it, her tone steady but quiet. "We have a son now. If you want this family to stay intact, you need to come clean about everything. This is our last chance." He simply nodded, avoiding eye contact. She let her tears fall silently, turning away. If he couldn't even muster an apology free of half-truths, how could she trust him to be a father? Christine was discharged 2 days later. She was still weak and pale, having lost a lot of blood during labor. Despite her precarious health, Michael insisted she move into his mother's estate for better care. Linda argued that Christine should recuperate at her own childhood home, where she could be free from the Harrington drama. But Michael and Catherine insisted their home was equipped with private nurses, security, and all comforts. Torn and exhausted, Christine relented, hoping to keep the peace. The Harrington estate was indeed opulent gilded mirrors, crystal chandeliers, soft carpets, and staff at every corner. The place intimidated Christine now, more than ever, because it felt like entering a gilded cage. Catherine hovered, trying to care for Gabriel and Christine with great attention. Linda hovered just as intensely, glaring at the slightest slip in Harrington courtesy. Michael, meanwhile, slipped in and out, citing urgent deals. Each time he left, Christine's chest tightened. She lived in dread of discovering more evidence of his affair. On a drizzly morning, Christine mustered the courage to confront her mother-in-law. She wanted to know if Catherine had knowledge of Michael's betrayal. Christine found Catherine in the estate's conservatory, pruning potted orchids. Quietly, she asked, "Did Michael bring another woman into our life? Please, if you know something, tell me." Catherine's face fell. She set down her pruning shears, avoiding Christine's gaze. "I've heard rumors. I won't lie to you. I confronted Michael months ago, told him to end whatever nonsense was going on. I believed him when he said it was just business associates and networking. But sometimes my intuition told me differently." She sighed. "Christine, I don't want to see you suffer. I was once in your position. Michael's father, William, well, he was rumored to have mistresses abroad. I turned a blind eye because that's what I was taught. In the Harrington family, public scandal is worse than any private sin. But you deserve better than living in denial." Stunned by the admission, Christine felt tears pooling in her eyes. "So, you're telling me to accept this? To ignore it?" she asked. Her voice trembled. Catherine shook her head, eyes shining with regret. "No, I'm telling you that you have a choice. If Michael refuses to change, you don't need to remain shackled by a broken vow. This is your life, yours and Gabriel's. Don't make my mistake of enduring silently. Unless he truly chooses to repent, you must consider your own well-being." Meanwhile, Valentina Rousseau's presence continued to loom over the Harrington family like a dark cloud. A week after Christine's discharge, Michael's phone lit up one morning as he was changing. Gabriel's diaper, one of the few fatherly acts Christine had seen him perform. Valentina's name appeared. Christine, who was propped against pillows in bed, froze, her eyes burning into the phone screen. Michael's expression shifted from mild panic to forced calm as he ended the call without speaking. He turned to Christine, who stared at him, her eyes flicking from the phone to his face. "Are you finally going to tell me the truth?" she said, voice hollow. He swallowed hard. "It's a business colleague. She's persistent. I'll handle it." He lied again, or at least tried to. That afternoon, Valentina decided to take matters into her own hands. She unexpectedly arrived at the Harrington estate, impeccably dressed in a red coat and stiletto heels, stepping out of a luxury sedan that definitely wasn't hers. Michael was in the study, poring over financial documents, and nearly spilled his coffee when the butler informed him of Valentina's presence at the gate. Frantic, he rushed out to intercept her before she made a scene inside. The wind whipped around them in the courtyard, carrying the promise of more rain. Valentina glared at him. "You haven't returned my calls for days," she said coldly. "We need to talk." Michael looked around nervously, aware that any staff member could overhear. "You have no right coming here," he hissed. "This is my family's home. I told you I needed time to sort things out." "Sort things out?" Valentina retorted. "You promised me you'd leave your wife once the baby was born. You said you were only waiting to avoid scandal during her pregnancy. Now you won't even pick up the phone." Michael felt his chest tighten. He'd never told Valentina he would leave Christine. Or had he? His mind hazed. There had been so many nights of champagne, indulgences, and overblown promises. Could he have said something that gave her false expectations? He stammered, Look, I need more time. Christine is in a fragile state. My son is only a week old. You can't just barge in here demanding I break up my family overnight." Valentina's features twisted with anger. "Don't play innocent with me, Michael. You used to shower me with lavish gifts and vow we'd be together. Now that the baby is here, you're ghosting me, trying to patch things up with your wife like you're some saintly husband. I won't be brushed aside." He closed his eyes, wrestling with regret, fear, and a sense of responsibility to both women. Please, just give me some time to figure out how to handle this, he pleaded. Valentina narrowed her eyes. Fine, she said, her voice dripping with scorn. But don't forget that your entire business empire hinges on the social network I introduced you to. I know secrets about your finances, your public image. If you think you can discard me and keep your precious reputation, think again. I'm not someone you can buy off with hush money. She turned on her heel and stalked back to her car. Michael stood there, the storm clouds gathering overhead. For the first time, he realized he was caught in a snare he himself had laid. The future of his marriage, his family name, and his entire fortune was on a razor's edge. Rumors of Valentina's brazen visit spread among the household staff. Word reached Linda Parsons, who wasted no time confronting Michael at breakfast the next morning. What on earth are you doing, parading some mistress at your mother's front gate? Have you no shame? Linda snapped, slamming her hand down on the table. Christine stood nearby, her face blanching with every syllable. Catherine Harrington hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands. Michael shot to his feet, eyes flashing with indignation. That's enough, Linda, he yelled. This is still my home. You can't just speak to me like... No, Christine cut in, her voice trembling. No, you don't get to order us around. This is about me, Gabriel, and the future you promised us. Either you come clean or I'm gone. Do you understand? I'm done playing this game, Michael. Michael glared at her, as if wanting to argue, but he saw the unwavering determination in her eyes. He shifted, guilt contorting his features. Finally, with a trembling sigh, he admitted, Valentina isn't just a business contact. She is someone I got involved with. It started as a way to secure certain investments. Then it spiraled. I never meant to let it go this far. The words spilled out like a confession to a crime he couldn't undo. Christine's face was a mask of heartbreak. Linda clenched her fists. Catherine sank into a chair, tears of shame in her eyes. Silence filled the grand dining room, the clicking of the chandelier overhead the only sound. Christine took a deep breath, tears welling up as she addressed Michael. Why? We had everything. Why wasn't that enough? He shook his head, as though searching for an explanation that would make sense of his senseless betrayal. Power, money. I don't know. I guess it got to me. I'm sorry, Christine. I never wanted to lose you. But the apology felt hollow, overshadowed by the enormity of his deception. Christine pressed her lips together in a grim line. How could I ever believe you again? She turned away from him, her heart pounding, torn between grief, rage, and the maternal urge to protect Gabriel. On some level, she wanted to run. On another level, she felt the weight of her marriage vows. She recalled Catherine's words, "Unless he truly chooses to repent, you must consider your own well-being." She glimpsed Linda's stricken face, feeling her mother's unwavering support as a lifeline. For years, she had tried to mold herself into the perfect society wife, trusting Michael more than she trusted her own instincts. And this was the outcome. Just when the Harrington household seemed on the brink of implosion, the unthinkable happened. Michael's business empire began to crumble. Rumors surfaced that a new competitor, financed by an unknown benefactor, was drawing away Michael's key clients. The media buzzed with speculation that Michael's brand had grown stale, overshadowed by fresh talent in the investment world. Stocks he owned started plummeting, and a handful of board members resigned in quick succession. Desperate to stem the hemorrhage, Michael spent countless hours locked in his home office, phone pressed to his ear. He called bankers, accountants, lawyers, anyone who could help him salvage what was left. At the same time, he wrestled with Valentina's veiled threats. She kept texting him demands, alluding to private information that could destroy him if leaked. He had no idea how to navigate this new landscape. He was haunted by the possibility that she was the puppet master behind the competitor eroding his client base. Christine watched this downfall from a distance, forced to stay at the estate because she was still recovering. She found it ironic that the same ambition which had once seduced her, Michael's unstoppable drive for success, was now poisoning him. He looked tired, older by a decade, the spark in his eyes replaced by desperation. And she felt a strange sense of relief, realizing she no longer idolized him. The rose-tinted glasses had shattered. She was simply a mother now, focused on Gabriel's well-being. The twist came when an internal auditor discovered traces of suspicious transactions in Michael's ledgers, significant funds funneled to shell companies affiliated with Valentina. This bombshell threatened Michael with legal consequences. Should the authorities catch wind, he could be indicted for fraud or money laundering. In panic, he consulted his mother, Catherine. Together, they decided to hush it up through undisclosed settlements, mortgaging parts of the Harrington estate if necessary. Christine, upon learning the severity of the situation, felt a tumult of emotions: anger, betrayal, pity, and an odd sense of justice. Michael's downfall was partly self-inflicted. He'd risked everything for illusions of grandeur. Her mother, Linda, advised her to pack her things and leave. "This is his mess," Linda said. "Don't let him drag you and Gabriel down with him." But Christine hesitated. Despite everything, she felt a pang of loyalty. Once, she had loved this man enough to marry him. There was also Catherine, who had shown her maternal kindness in recent weeks, advising her to put herself and Gabriel first. In truth, Christine just didn't know if leaving was right or if staying could ever mend the deep wounds. She felt paralyzed, gripped by the swirling chaos. Michael's business meltdown reached a crescendo when his biggest investor pulled out, citing lack of confidence in his leadership. Overnight, the Harrington brand lost half its value. Headlines read, "Harrington Empire in peril and once mighty mogul on the brink." Paparazzi camped outside the estate. Every phone call was met with dread, every ring signaling the potential for more bad news. With nowhere to turn, Michael finally broke. Late one evening, after receiving a particularly grim message from his broker, he walked into Gabriel's nursery. The baby slept peacefully in a mahogany crib, oblivious to the turmoil that threatened to engulf his parents. Michael stood there, tears sliding down his cheeks as he realized how badly he had failed. He had believed money and external validation were everything. Now, stripped of his illusions, he felt naked and lost, uncertain what truly mattered. In that raw moment, Christine entered the nursery and found him sobbing quietly. She froze, uncertain whether to console him or maintain her distance. Sensing her presence, Michael turned, eyes red. He swallowed hard and said, "I'm sorry. It sounded like a plea. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm done lying. I'll sell the companies if I have to. I'll repay every debt. His voice cracked. I just want to be a father to Gabriel, if you'll let me." Christine's heart twisted. She approached him slowly, uncertain if this breakdown was genuine or another performance. Gently, she looked him in the eyes. "What changed?" He sighed, shaking his head. "I thought I was invincible," he confessed. "When the money poured in, the power was intoxicating. I lost sight of what's real you. Gabriel, the marriage I promised to honor. I can't fix the past, but I want a future with you. Please don't leave me." His words hung in the nursery's soft glow. Christine felt her tears trickle. She realized that she did love him once. There was a part of her that still wanted the dream they'd shared. But the hurt was so deep. "Michael," she whispered, "it's not that simple. You hurt me in ways I might never forget. I can't just wave a wand and pretend it didn't happen." He nodded, eyes cast downward. I know, I'll prove to you if you give me a chance. No more business expansions, no more dinners with questionable people. I'll place what's left of my fortune into a trust for Gabriel. I'll step back from the spotlight. I'll do anything. Christine's silence was heavy. She stared at her son, so innocent, his tiny chest rising and falling. Whatever choice she made now would shape his future. Catherine's words echoed in her head. Unless he truly chooses to repent, you must consider your own well-being. For the first time, she sensed that maybe, just maybe, Michael's regret was real. She decided to take it one day at a time. I'm not promising forgiveness, she told him softly, but I won't close the door on trying. Relief flooded his eyes. He gently touched the edge of the crib, tears trembling on his eyelashes. They stood there in silence, a shaky truce formed, each acknowledging the fragile thread of hope that might yet bind them. Just when it seemed Michael might salvage some fragments of his life, Valentina played her final card. A scathing article appeared online, detailing Michael's affair, complete with time-stamped photos of him and Valentina entering exclusive clubs, exiting hotels, and traveling together on his private jet. More damning was the evidence of questionable funds wired from Michael's businesses to shell entities under Valentina's name. The article was accompanied by sensational headlines: Millionaire Michael Harrington's pregnant wife abandoned, Mistress spills the beans and from riches to ruin, the downfall of a philandering mogul. The media feasted on every salacious detail. Christine felt physically ill, reading the allegations that her child was born amid the father's betrayal. Paparazzi swarmed near the gates, cameras trained on any family member who stepped out. Linda was furious, threatening legal action. Catherine's health worsened from stress. The Harrington brand, already teetering, went into freefall. Michael tried to shield Christine from the outside world, instructing security to keep reporters at bay. He filed a cease and desist letter against Valentina's claims. Though he knew the evidence was real, he had given it to her himself in moments of careless trust. The question now was how Christine would react. She had been merciful when he'd confessed in private, but seeing it plastered in public was another matter. To his surprise, Christine approached him with a calm that bordered on eerie. "Are you going to fight this?" she asked, handing him a printout of the article. "Or are you going to let it consume you?" He rubbed his eyes, exhausted. "I'll fight it if you want me to. I'll do everything in my power to protect you and Gabriel. But I won't deny that it happened. Maybe I deserve this public shaming. I just don't want you to be hurt anymore." Her tone was measured. "I am hurt. But for Gabriel's sake, I'll stand by you in dealing with these vultures. That doesn't mean I forgive what happened. It means I need to protect our son from living in scandal. We need to be unified in that." Michael nodded, tears threatening once again. He knew this was Christine's strength, her unwavering devotion to Gabriel. She wasn't fighting for him as much as she was fighting for their child, and he would do everything possible not to squander this final chance. In the weeks that followed, Christine and Michael presented a united front, issuing statements that they were handling the matter privately for the sake of their newborn son. Catherine used her social connections to mitigate some of the negative press, calling in favors to quell the more intrusive tabloids. Linda, for her part, stood by Christine, offering emotional support, but also keeping Michael on a short leash. If he stepped out of line again, Linda would drag her daughter and grandchild back home without hesitation. Ironically, the scandal brought a touch of relief. The wave of public scrutiny forced Michael to sever ties with Valentina definitively and close the shady financial channels. He sold off a significant chunk of his businesses at a steep discount, focusing on a single core company that he believed could be rebuilt with integrity. He spent more hours at home, attempting to bond with Gabriel, offering to help Christine in ways he'd never done before, changing diapers, rocking the baby to sleep, even cooking simple meals. Christine was hesitant to trust these gestures initially, suspecting they were fleeting attempts at redemption. But over time, she noticed changes in his demeanor. He listened more, boasted less, and seemed visibly pained whenever he recalled his affair. None of this erased the heartbreak or the nights Christine had spent alone, sobbing in the dark. She continued her therapy sessions, discussing her battered self-esteem, her conflicting emotions about staying. She also insisted Michael seek counseling for himself to address the root causes of his infidelity and toxic ambition. He agreed without argument, showing up to sessions with a seriousness that surprised even Christine. Gradually, a fragile new dynamic settled in. Michael remained under legal and financial scrutiny for months, working tirelessly to prove he was a legitimate businessman, not a fraud. Valentina dropped off the radar after her story was published, likely paid by rival investors to sabotage Michael's empire or simply seeking the limelight for her own gains. Regardless, her role in their lives ended as abruptly as it began, leaving deep scars in its wake. Nearly a year passed after Gabriel's birth, a year during which Christine fought through sleepless nights, wavering emotions, and the avalanche of media fallout. Yet, even in the darkness, glimmers of hope surfaced. As her physical strength returned, she discovered an inner resilience that went beyond merely surviving Michael's betrayal. She had been through heartbreak, loneliness, and public scrutiny, but now she was determined to channel her suffering into something meaningful. She vividly remembered lying alone in the hospital, unsure if Michael would ever show. The memory of that fear and abandonment turned into the spark for her new passion project, a charity initiative aimed at helping vulnerable mothers navigate medical, financial, and emotional hurdles during pregnancy. When Catherine learned of Christine's plans, she offered to leverage her philanthropic network to secure initial seed funding. Despite their sometimes fraught relationship, Catherine admired Christine's determination and introduced her to donors, granting her access to gala events and charitable circles. Inspired by Gabriel's arrival, Christine named her organization the Gabriel Project, though at first it consisted of little more than a small office space and a handful of volunteers. Christine nurtured it like a second child. She spent long hours speaking with prospective sponsors, writing grant proposals, and recruiting medical professionals who could provide affordable healthcare services or counseling to pregnant women in need. In time, the Gabriel Project held community workshops, offered classes on infant care, and provided mental health support, especially for women who felt isolated by their circumstances. Each day, Christine drew on her memory of those cold hospital hallways to remind herself why this mattered so deeply. Meanwhile, Michael was forced to examine the wreckage of his once thriving empire. Over half of his businesses were either sold off or restructured under new owners, leaving him with a single core company that had survived the scandal. Racked with guilt and the fear of losing Christine entirely, he focused on rebuilding with integrity. One of his first public statements delivered at a shareholders' meeting was a promise to adopt strict ethical guidelines, prioritize transparent accounting, and incorporate philanthropic endeavors into his business model. Initially, some investors scoffed, accusing him of staging a PR stunt to regain credibility. But over time, as he stuck to his word, skepticism gave way to a cautious respect. Behind the scenes, Michael was humbler, more thoughtful. The once arrogant mogul who enjoyed lavish galas and glittering affairs had vanished, replaced by a man who woke at 2:00 a.m. to cradle his crying son and learned how to rock him gently back to sleep. He replaced business dinners with calls to mentors who could guide him toward ethical investments. For the first time in his life, Michael sought professional therapy, both individual and couples counseling with Christine, to confront the roots of his egotism and habitual need for validation. While therapy was often uncomfortable, it gave him tools to recognize his triggers and slowly unlearn the toxic patterns that had led to his infidelity. Even with visible signs of change, Christine wrestled daily with the trauma of Michael's betrayal. Every time he stepped out of the estate, every time his phone vibrated with a message, her stomach clenched. Part of her believed he would betray her again, disappearing into the night for some clandestine rendezvous. And though Michael insisted he was done with that life, years of heartbreak wouldn't heal overnight. Their arguments often flared over seemingly mundane topics: what time Michael would be home, how much money should be funneled into the new business, whether Catherine was intruding too much on Gabriel's upbringing. More than once, Christine stormed away from the dinner table in tears, while Michael bowed his head in quiet despair. But instead of shutting down or burying their anger, they forced themselves to talk it out, sometimes with a counselor present. Bit by bit, they learned to lay boundaries, discuss finances transparently, and hold each other accountable. Throughout the tumult, Linda Parsons, Christine's mother, remained an unwavering force. She made frequent visits to the Harrington estate, unafraid to stare Michael down with clear disapproval if she suspected he was slipping back into old habits. Yet, Linda also recognized that Michael was trying. When she saw him up late, meticulously reviewing charity finances for the Gabriel project, or struggling to heat a bottle for Gabriel at 3 a.m, she acknowledged his effort. Though she rarely offered praise, her criticisms softened into cautious tolerance. Her primary concern was Christine's well-being, and she privately counseled her daughter to remain vigilant but open to reconciliation if it meant providing Gabriel a stable home. About 10 months into this uneasy truce, Michael arranged a surprise for Christine. He took her to see the newly renovated offices of his core company. The walls featured framed photos of philanthropic work, including some from the Gabriel Project's latest outreach events. He had set aside a corner of the main lobby dedicated to charitable partnerships. When Christine stepped in and saw pictures of mothers holding healthy newborns, each caption crediting the Gabriel Project for its involvement, tears pricked her eyes. Part of her wanted to remain guarded, but seeing how he publicly honored her efforts and how he tied his re-envisioned business to a cause she cherished moved her more than any diamond ring could have. Their relationship was still a patchwork quilt of trust, stitched together from apologies, late-night confessions, and measured acts of kindness. Yet, for the first time in a long while, Christine dared to believe that maybe they could stand on common ground again. She was no fool. She carried her scars openly, reminding herself that betrayal had a way of creeping in through cracks in communication. But she also recognized that Michael was a different man, shaped by humiliation, penance, and the love he had almost lost. On Gabriel's first birthday, Michael suggested a small vow renewal ceremony, a private gathering on the estate's manicured lawn, just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Christine initially hesitated. The wound was still tender, but Linda encouraged her to listen to her heart. Catherine, who had seen her own share of heartbreak in the Harrington family, offered to handle the details, ensuring the ceremony would be simple and modest, free from the public eye. When the day arrived, only immediate family and closest friends were present. Candles flickered in the gentle evening breeze, illuminating a small altar adorned with white lilies. Christine held Gabriel in her arms while Michael stood across from her, hands shaking with emotion. In front of everyone, he openly confessed his failings: the night he failed to show at the hospital, the lies and lavish outings, the arrogance that nearly cost him his family. His voice cracked as he vowed, "I will spend the rest of my life making amends to you, Christine, and to our son. My greatest regret is that I abandoned you when you needed me most, but from this moment forward, you will never stand alone." Tears streaked Christine's cheeks. She didn't pretend to forget or dismiss the betrayal that had nearly destroyed them. Rather, she acknowledged her pain openly, stating that trust was a fragile treasure she could only give again in small increments. She spoke of the fear and the loneliness, the nights of second-guessing whether to stay or go, and yet she concluded by affirming her decision to try, to keep walking forward, albeit cautiously, for Gabriel's sake and for the possibility of renewed love. Their guests witnessed every raw emotion, from regret to relief, stitched into those exchanged vows. When Christine and Michael finally kissed, the applause was subdued but meaningful. It was an embrace not of perfect romance, but of hard-won commitment in the face of life's ugliest storms. By the end of that day, Christine sensed a subtle shift. She realized happily ever after was a myth. The real victory lay in wrestling through life's trials and choosing to continue alongside each other. She had survived the worst version of her husband, and he had survived the worst version of himself. Now, they had a small chance to build something more authentic than the idealized marriage they once had. Back inside the estate, the family gathered for a quiet celebration. Gabriel giggled in his grandmother Linda's arms, while Catherine looked on with misty eyes, handing out glasses of sparkling cider. In that moment, Christine recognized that the Harrington family's future wasn't about perfection or the pursuit of endless ambition. It was about humility, honesty, and shared determination to protect what truly mattered: love, loyalty, and their precious son. Thus, after a year of sorrow, soul-searching and stumbling steps, they reached a resolution, one that was neither neat nor guaranteed, but real. The road ahead would be long and full of challenges, yet Christine took heart in knowing she was no longer alone. She had forged her own identity through suffering, found a calling that ignited her passion, and reclaimed her voice in a place that once silenced her. In that sense, the vow renewal marked not a fairy tale ending, but a new beginning, one defined by mutual commitment to healing, growth, and a promise to stand by each other through every storm to come. Years later, Christine would look back on that stormy night in the hospital and marvel at her own fortitude. She had become a mother under the harshest circumstances, discovering her strength in the crucible of betrayal. Michael's transformation, while never erasing the past, showed that people could change when faced with losing everything they once believed they couldn't live without. The story of Christine and Michael Harrington, of the pregnant wife, waiting alone in the hospital while the millionaire was out with his mistress, became a cautionary tale among their acquaintances. Some insisted Christine was a fool for giving him another chance. Others admired her bravery to rebuild her life on her own terms, demanding accountability from the very man who had deceived her. In the end, the Harrington name survived, albeit with a different meaning. Where it once signified unbridled ambition, it now hinted at a second chance earned through humility and heartfelt remorse. Most importantly, for Christine, it represented a path she chose not to abandon entirely, forging a future for herself and for Gabriel, one where she refused to remain silent, and where love was tested, battered, and ultimately tempered by fire. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate redemption. Christine Harrington's lonely hours in that hospital room remind us of the power of hope, even when all seems lost. From the whispers of a socialite's affair to the collapse of an entire business empire, we saw how one decision can unravel a lifetime's worth of trust, yet also spark a profound transformation. Christine's strength and unwavering love for her newborn son paved a path toward forgiveness, but it was never an easy road. She endured betrayal, confronted secrets, and bravely rebuilt her life. Michael's downfall showed us that redemption is not impossible. It is, however, neither guaranteed nor painless. If you found yourself captivated by this real-life drama, please like this video, share it with friends who love a dramatic twist, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that touch the heart.